Henry Kissinger, the legendary foreign secretary, said about Israel that Israel has no foreign policy but only internal policy. Of course, every death is bad. Every death is bad. War is not a nice thing. The figures of if an organization like Hamas with 30,000 terrorists will be perceived as winning over Israel, it will be a huge problem because there will be copycats. So we are fighting a bigger war. People feel uncomfortable with it because some people think that everything can be solved by speaking, by diplomacy. Who are supporting us very strongly, some who are opposing us very strongly, many people in the middle who are thinking how to deal with it. We are very determined because, again, we have no alternative. The alternative, and I said it in Israel, they have no place in the world. And this is a big issue. That's why we are so determined not to lose this war.
Tell me if I'm wrong. You were suggesting that proxies of Iran were behind the attacks that have taken place here in New Delhi, the embassy Iran.
We have very good reason to believe that Iran was involved, Iranian proxies and connected to Iran in all three events here. At the end of the day, what is Iran doing? Look at it long term. Iran is destabilizing the Middle East because they understand that the stability that there is now is not playing in the favor of the Shiites. They're playing with all of us. All this behavior of Iran, but think of this behavior of Iran, piracy, supporting terrorism, destabilization. If they would have the nuclear umbrella above their head, they would feel secure to do 10 times worse than they're doing now. So I think this only makes it stronger, clearer, why we have to prevent Iran from nuclear weapon, why we have to put pressure on Iran.
I want to welcome you watching Republic Podcast with me, Shavin Sen. This perhaps is the first episode with Israel's ambassador to India, Ambassador Gilon. Thank you very much for speaking to Republic TV. We're talking at a very difficult time, keeping in mind what has happened in the last 24 to 48 hours. Ambassador Gilon, let me begin by asking you, a narrative that has essentially been built, that had Israel not attacked a diplomatic mission, such a situation wouldn't come up. How do you really look at that?
I think we should go back and see the sources of the whole issue. Iran has been having a war of proxy with Israel for many, many years. Just to remind that in the early 90s, just now a court in Argentina ruled that Iran, together with Hezbollah, its proxy, were behind two bombings of bringing down our embassy in Buenos Aires with 29 dead, a few diplomats, and also the Jewish center, community center, with many more dead. Started there. All over the years there were attempts against Israel here and there with proxy or directly. Even around our embassy here, there were 3 times that we were attacked in different ways in Delhi. So there was a bomb in 2012, I believe, on the car of a wife of one of our diplomats, and she was severely wounded. And twice in the last 3 years we had bombs in front and behind our embassy, and all connected to Iran in our knowledge. So it started much earlier. In Iran, what happened on October 7 is that the proxy of Iran, when I speak of proxies, I mean of organizations that are funded, trained, and equipped by Iran. And on October 7, the atrocities that Hamas did, invading Israel, invading 30 Jewish communities, killing, massacring people and everything, all the atrocities, they will not repeat atrocities, I think it's too terrible to speak about it, but burning alive people and all of that. And since then, when Israel started retaliating on Gaza, we found that all the other proxies of Iran joined them, of course, by this decision of Iran. Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Shiite organizations both in Syria and Iraq, the Houthis, not only shooting at Israel, but also shooting at shipping around Yemen. So all that to say that now we started the issue with Iran, no. It's a long issue of war by proxy, and Iran decided to make it into a direct attack on Israel. I think it was a mistake. It a failed attack, but I think it was also a huge mistake by them.
Well, I'll come into the detailing of what has happened over the last 48 hours, but before I move on, Ambassador, correct me if I'm wrong, you were suggesting that proxies of Iran were behind the attacks that have taken place here in New Delhi, the embassy Iran?
Yeah,
We have very concrete
we have very good reason to believe that Iran was involved, Iranian proxies and connected to Iran in all three events here.
Let me also take this a little forward, because what we are essentially looking at is the situation that a red line has been crossed. You say that this is, of course, it's not new, but having said that, when you're looking at a diplomatic mission being attacked, and especially given the fact that there is a lot of expectation that the Western world, or particularly everyone, has from Israel, do you believe in hindsight that could have been avoided, or you believe that that was the need of the hour?
First of all, Israel never assumed responsibility for this attack. We start officially, we never assumed responsibility. Secondly, the question one should ask himself, why are 7 Revolutionary Guard operatives that are acknowledged in a few countries as a terror organization, the people who are behind all this organizing, equipping, financing and helping the whole destabilization of the Middle East. At the end of the day, what is Iran doing? Look at it long term. Iran is destabilizing the Middle East because they understand that the stability that there is now is not playing in the favor of the Shiites. Right. Because most of the countries are still under Sunni leadership. So wherever they don't have power, they will try to destabilize. And you saw that all around the region. They were involved, they already de facto took over Lebanon with Hezbollah. They were involved with Assad in Syria. They were involved in Iraq through Shiite militias. They were involved with the Houthis. They are involved with the Palestinians, not only Hamas, but also Islamic Jihad. All these organizations, you see them destabilizing in order to create a new reality that is playing in their favor. So the question is, why are these people anyhow being there, operating from Syria? This is a very important question that people should ask themselves.
With regards to the doctrine of Israel, Israel always perhaps would be like to be seen as a country which is not really defensive in nature, but also being able to protect its own citizens. Today, when we see a situation where there is growing international pressure, particularly with the G7 coming into the picture, saying that Israel perhaps needs to withdraw or perhaps recalibrate itself, do you find yourself in a much more difficult position? Because at the end of the day, you have another hostile nation directly attacking, and it's unprecedented in human history when 300 projectiles have been fired on another country. 350. So it's unprecedented to begin with. Israel would have never expected this. But today, do you feel your hands are tied because of the international pressure?
So first of all, we are used to projectiles. We had thousands of them coming, smaller ones, different ones.
But this time it's unprecedented.
From Gaza, from Lebanon over the years, that's where we had wars. Since Israel always depended on itself for its security, we will continue doing that and doing what is right for us. We are a very small country, less than 10 million people, around 7 million Jews out of them, half of the Jewish population of the world, more or less. And we are attacked, as you see, from multiple fronts. And there is nothing, we can do but fight for us. There is no other place for the Jews. Look on the surge of anti-Semitism in the Western world. Students in the US, Jewish students cannot go to universities. They are attacked there verbally and sometimes even physically. The same goes to Europe, the elite universities of the world. And this is, anti-Semitism is on the rise. Only makes clear to us Jews, my father is a Holocaust survivor, how critical it is to have a strong Israel that can be a home for the Jewish people. So we will do amounting pressure, not amounting pressure, we will do whatever is needed to protect ourselves. We are always self-dependent, and whatever is needed to be done, we are liked, we are not liked. People don't feel uncomfortable with what Israel does or doesn't do. I prefer people feeling uncomfortable with what I do than being dead. Because the alternative for us, we cannot lose the war. And we will not lose the war because we are very determined. And I would love people to love me. Of course, I prefer this situation. But what many in the world don't understand, that we are fighting now a bigger war, that it's the war of Israel. Because what's happening here is that this Hamas, ISIS organization, with the support of Iran, what they are trying to do is to create a regional war.
Right.
That's why the Americans interfered. They understood that on October 8th they came and sent warnings and fleets into the region in order to prevent that. They want to create a religious war, a regional war, whatever they can do there. And we have to understand that the people of ISIS, that the American coalition was able to kill some of them, to disperse others back to their countries. They're all over. They're in the West, they're in the US, in Europe, they are in India. Some came back from ISIS. They are in Bangladesh, they are in Maldives. They're all around because, and the ideology, which was burning in them so strong, I would believe that the ideology is still there. The organization is disturbed. Maybe some, the motivation is there, but lack of how do you execute it. If an organization like Hamas with 30,000 terrorists will be perceived as winning over Israel, it will be a huge problem because there will be copycats. People will try to do the same, and people who are living now will feel, in other countries, will feel that, okay, now there is another opportunity, another chance, and it will risk many moderate countries in the region and in the world. So we are fighting a bigger war. People feel uncomfortable with it because some people think that everything can be solved by speaking, by diplomacy. No, when you have this ideology, murderous ideology, the only way, and that's the Americans did it before in the coalition, the international coalition, the only way, you cannot take the ideology out of the people. You can get rid of the people. That's the only thing, and the structure. And that's what we are trying to do also in Gaza, and on the way also bring back we have there 133 hostages, and we have to bring them back. They are more than 6 months there, from a baby who was a few months old when he was kidnapped. Now he's older than 1 year, to people who are in their late 80s. They have to come back. They cannot survive in these conditions. We saw how bad were the people who already came back. So.
Right. In fact, I've spoken to a lot of survivors, and I'll come to that in a short while from now. But Ambassador, when you look at the statements that have been made by Western leaders, do you believe that there is some amount of doublespeak and also domestic concerns, particularly with elections in the United States of America? Do you think somewhere down the line, and I'm drawing a parallel with the Ukrainians also here, because somewhere down the line they feel there is a pressure that is coming from the United States of America, and particularly with domestic concerns, not really the concerns of the Israelis, not really the concerns of the Ukrainians. It is more about US's domestic compulsions.
So I must start and say that we are thankful for the US. I'm a huge supporter of the US. I served twice in the United States, second time in Washington, D.C. I'm a great admirer of this country. Its support to Israel that is second to none, and everything there. Of course that there are politics, but every country has internal politics. And of course that once Henry Kissinger, the legendary foreign secretary, said about Israel that Israel has no foreign policy, but only internal policy. And I agree with him, by the way, because I think that all countries in the world have, first, especially democratic countries, because they have to consider what the public is saying. Non-democratic, it's easier. Everyone is considering in its foreign policy, internal politics, of course, and especially in time of elections. So I could not, but it's also about Europe. I'm sure that many leaders in Europe, when a very organized way, elements in Europe that are radical left and Islam, Muslim organizations and others, came out to demonstrate against on October 7th, they didn't demonstrate for Israel. Immediately the humanitarian approach came. Humanitarian is only one side, only on the Gazan side. So when the humanitarian approach came in, and people came out, and now you see blocking of bridges in the US, but also in Europe, you see big demonstrations in the street. A politician, has to calibrate or calculate his political interest. It's there with everyone in the world, by the way. I don't exclude anyone. Again, I think that there are some who are supporting us very strongly, some who are opposing us very strongly, many people in the middle who are thinking how to deal with it. We are very determined because, again, we have no alternative. The alternative, and I said it in the past in interviews, the alternative is to swim to Cyprus, more or less. It's too far away for us because there is no, with every country around us, we have peace agreements, of course, with Egypt and Jordan, but if the situation is this, that the Jews cannot live in the Middle East and Israel, they have no place in the world. And this is a big issue. That's why we are so determined not to lose this war.
So when you hear this criticism that Israel faces today, is that they're losing the narrative here. And the reason why I'm using this word, Ambassador, is because time and again they say that perhaps the way you have dealt with Gaza right now could have been done in a better manner. 30,000 over deaths have taken place. So there is this building narrative. How do you really respond to that? How does Israel really look at it? Because it is almost coming across is that humanitarian assistance is something that you're not concerned about.
So I think that there is room for criticism on everyone, and maybe we could have done things different and better way. I think that I believe that the challenge that we found in Gaza, the most populated place in the world, over 2 million people in a very dense population, where Hamas wants you to kill population, because what is the modus operandi of Hamas? For years, not now, they used to shoot at Israel, rockets or to whatever attacks, and run back to Gaza to hide behind the population, hoping that we will kill and there will be an international, they know that there is an imbalance of power. So they want an international outcry to put pressure on Israel to stop the attack or retaliation that we did in Gaza. It happened for many years. What happened, the mistake they'd done, they were too successful and killing too many in a cruel way on October 7, in a way that we cannot continue this cycle that they attack, we retaliate, we are pressured, and we stop. So yeah, this cycle was cut. Israel decided that we cannot accept anymore having a terror organization like Hamas on our border. We have to get rid of their capabilities and rule of Gaza and bring back the hostages. These were and we are still working on these assumptions. The world, again, is uncomfortable. We could have done things differently or can't. No one had the challenge of having, beyond the most populated area, having 600 kilometers. We are fighting a war that is a parallel war. We are fighting above the ground, we are fighting under the ground. When it comes to the numbers of dead, of course, every dead is bad. Every dead is bad. War is not a nice thing. The figures of 30,000 that are based on the Hamas Ministry of Health are there. I would say, I don't know if the figures are accurate or not. I would say that according to our calculation, we killed at least 12,000 terrorists by now, from October 7 until now. At least 12,000. Now, they don't distinguish between a terrorist and between a civilian. So in their numbers, they include also the terrorist. So it's very hard to understand and to know and to kill. I saw experts saying that the ratio, assuming that these numbers are accurate, more than 12,000 terrorists, and meaning that there are 18,000 non-terrorists, not proved terrorists, is a much better ratio in comparison to other such places in less complicated areas. So Israel is doing the utmost to prevent human. You know what? First, because we are not a hired gun army. My children are in the military. I was in the military. It's everyone there. Everyone in Israel serves. So it's not like you have these people who are rough and all their life they are fighting. No, these are people who are daily life are teachers or are lawyers or are shopkeepers, and they come to, this is not what they were trained for 2-3 years, and now they're doing reserve. So it's everyone, students from university, everyone goes to the military. So, for that reason that we are a very liberal and humanitarian country, this is one element. The other element is also, as I told you before, if we have more casualties, there is more pressure. So when they lied in the beginning that the hit of the hospital was done by an Israeli rocket, not a Shifa, another hospital where they claimed that 500 people died, immediately they said eventually it was a misfired Islamic Jihad rocket that they tried to shoot at Israel, but it failed, and it killed there a few people, not 500 people. So, this disinformation, and this is one of the biggest problems that we have. The social media is unmonitored. People can say anything they want. Disinformation, misinformation, fake news, alternative news, everything is there. And it's very hard to fight it when there is no screening of the information. People get it. Today, the young people, they care more of how you give it to them. If you give it here you don't have TikTok, but on a nice video on TikTok, doesn't matter what is the content. They will buy any content as long as it plays into their, into the way they want to see the content. And this is one of the biggest problems that we have today in the world, I think, for everyone, for us, but also for others.
Have your objectives of this war been achieved? Would you say that? Because at the end of the day, you have the leadership of the Hamas still being protected. So has that been recalibrated? Have there been changes in the objectives of this war?
No, they were not achieved and they're not changed. Because as we are very consistent, as I mentioned before, we have to get rid of Hamas leadership in Gaza and their capabilities to re-attack Israel and bring back the hostages. And I think these were not achieved, and there was pressure on Israel because now Rafah is the only place where we didn't go in. And there is, of course, a lot of pressure not to go into Rafah, but we told people you cannot, if you have a fire, extinguish 80% of the fire, it doesn't help. If there is still 20% of the fire, it will catch up full fire. And this is what we are trying to prevent. We have to go to Gaza, to Rafah, to find the hostages that are mostly probably there, and the leadership that is mostly probably there. We have to do that. We have to do it in a good way. Even the criticism that you mentioned about humanitarian, I think maybe, in the beginning, Israel was in a disarray. It took us time. Now the amount of humanitarian aid going in is not only limitless, it's over what is needed for daily upkeeping of people. So it's huge what is going on now. Thanks also to many donors and activists around the world who are helping. So we're very thankful also for that. But I don't think that humanitarian, at least not from the supply point of view, how do you disperse it in places where, like Rafah, where IDF is not there? This is another question. The problem is that Hamas uses it as a leverage on the population because they have the food. Either they ask people for money for food that is free, given free by donated free, or they use it as a tool. You will not get food if you don't do what we need you to do and stuff like that. So it's very complicated. People think that it's an easy thing. Why doesn't Israel do this? Israel do that? We are among the most sophisticated and experienced militaries in the world, technologically and otherwise. We have more lawyers than I think all militaries because everything is done with the lawyer in the background to make sure that we are adhering to international laws. It's very complicated. It's not a simple thing. If it would be simple and we could finish it in one day, believe me, we would have preferred. It is prolonging and very hard on us, but that's something we have to do. We cannot afford another October 7 attack.
One final question, Ambassador, is with regards to the expectation that you have from India at this point in time, particularly after the attack that took place from the Iranian side. We saw a balancing position that India has taken. Many would say it's a very practical position that India has taken, looking at the fact that we're looking at a de-escalation. How do you really view the position that India has taken?
I must say that from October 7, I would start there. I think that the Indian position was outstanding against terrorism, against Hamas. Already in the afternoon, when not everything was fully understood, the magnitude of this horrendous attack, already Prime Minister Modi tweeted very strongly against terrorism and support for Israel. And this set the tone, and I think that was the tone. I expect in general, we expect Iran is playing with all the world, destabilizing, supporting terrorism, now doing high seas piracy by states. I mean, hijacking. Before they did it just by proxy, by the Houthis. The Houthis are using Iranian armament. There is no doubt there, okay? Now Iran is doing it directly, and there was also a claim, by the way, that the ship, the tanker that like 2 months ago that was shot by Iranian from Iran on the way to just outside or inside the economic waters of India. So the Iranians are playing with all of us, and I think that we have to unite the normal world in order to put pressure on Iran to go back to being a normal country. And think one element that is very important here. All this behavior of Iran, would they have had nuclear weapon by now, would have been a totally different thing. On the one hand, for Israel, the Iranians, from the leadership down, many spoke about the need to wipe out Israel off the map. If they have nuclear weapon, theoretically, they also have the capacity to do that. Although you saw that our defense systems are very, 99% of interception of the incoming rockets. I mean, it's unprecedented, and with the help of great friends, US and other friends in the region, this is unprecedented. The capacity that self-Israeli technology that, by the way, is also exported or integrated into MRSAM, the joint anti-missile project that we have with India. This capacity is enormous. So if Iran would have a nuclear weapon, first of all, it's a risk for Israel. But think of this behavior of Iran: piracy, supporting terrorism, destabilization. If they would have the nuclear umbrella above their head, they would feel secure to do 10 times worse than they're doing now. So I think this only makes it stronger, clearer, why we have to prevent Iran from nuclear weapon, why we have to put pressure on Iran. And that's where we want the normal way, and especially our friends like India and other countries, to be.
Well, thank you very much, Ambassador, for taking out the time and speaking to Republic TV. It's always a pleasure having you on our broadcast.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.